we'll start in the East, where UConn is the #1 overall seed. The Huskies are the -120 favorite to win this side of the bracket and +400 favorite to cut down the nets at the end of the tournament for the second year in a row. So, Tom, I'll start with you. What are your best bets for the East?
Well, in round one, I really like Drake. I think they got a good matchup with Washington State. The Pac-12 was really down this year. They were lucky to get 4 teams in. Colorado was the last team in, and Oregon had to win the tournament. It was really only 2 teams all year that were in that position, and that was Washington State and Arizona. The way Washington State plays, they're kind of limited offensively. They depend on offensive rebounds, but Drake is the #1 defensive rebounding team in the country. And the other thing I like about Drake is they were here last year. They led Miami by 8 with just over 2 minutes to go and just completely melted down. Miami won and ended up going on a Final Four run. But I think Drake is in a great position. I think they're one of the better mid-major teams. I got them at +1.5. I figured that would probably flip this morning. It did. Take them as a small favorite. I still like them.
Yeah, Tom, I love that Drake play. I actually played them last night, kind of knowing they would flip this morning as well. But how about you give us your winner and your sleeper for this bracket as well, and we'll fit all of our best bets together.
Well, my winner, listen, the committee didn't do any favors with UConn. This is a tough region, but it's still hard for me to go against the Huskies. I think if they get tripped up, it would be Auburn. Auburn plays physical. They're deep. They can run a lot of bodies at them, but it still give UConn the matchup advantage in most of these games that they'll have to face Iowa State and Auburn. If I had to pick a sleeper, I don't think this is the region we're going to get a sleeper, to be completely honest with you. But if there was one team, BYU probably has the biggest gap from first round exit to potential Final Four run just because of the way they shoot the three. If they can get hot for a few games, that would be a dangerous team. And the other thing about BYU is one of their potential matchups could be Iowa State, a familiar opponent that they beat by 15 and lost a close game at Iowa State. So if I was going to pick a sleeper, give me the Cougars.
All right. I like it. Mike, let's go to you next. Who are you looking at in the East?
Well, Grace, I'm all like Tom said, Drake played him last night as well, +1.5. I think a lot of us that bet college basketball immediately saw that line and thought wrong team favored here, right? You're not saying it should be multiple possessions the other way, but bare minimum, absolute pick 'em. So I definitely on Drake. As far as the region, though, I like UConn. It's a tough. This committee didn't do them favors by putting a couple of those teams in there, but they did give them a favor in terms of geographical location. The first 2 rounds, absolutely, really first, all of it really in their region, going to be almost home games, as close to home games as you can get in an NCAA tournament format. So I love that for UConn. I also agree that there's not much of a sleeper in this region. I would be absolutely stunned if it was anyone below the 4 seed. I think the 4 seed in Auburn could be the case that gives them the best matchup when I look at everything here. So like Tom, my sleeper, again, if you want to call a sleeper a 4 seed, I believe it is a sleeper in this region because of how dominant UConn has really been. But when I look at the Auburn game, that one, I've got it only as a 2-point spread for UConn on a neutral site. So I think Auburn gives them the biggest challenge, keeping in mind it's a massive contrast in style. Auburn wants to get out and run, push the tempo. I think that these teams having not seen each other gives a little tiny edge to Auburn. So sleeper for me in this one's Auburn, but I think UConn does ultimately take this region.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's fair for UConn to end up with this bracket. Iowa State, Auburn, Illinois, those are all top 10 teams nationally, according to Ken Pom. And then even San Diego State, that's the highest rated team among all the Mountain West teams who are going dancing this year. And we know how good that conference is. And yet, I still don't see anybody picking against UConn. But Zach, I'll go to you now. Who do you like in the East?
Well, I like UConn as well. They're going to get back to the Final Four. As far as my best bet, I'm going to go with Duquesne +9 now against BYU. We've seen a lot of movement in this game, but they just made a recent announcement. The coach is going to retire after their NCAA tournament run. They come in having won 8 straight games in 10 of their last 11, and we know the Atlantic 10 it hasn't been a strong conference. They're usually a 1 or 2 bid league team, so that's devalued them a little bit going into March. But I look at the Dukes, they match the upperclassmen of BYU. They have Day Grant, fifth-year senior. I've seen him go into Clemson and get his team a lead late in the second half. They have Fusini Drame, who was part of that St. Peter's deep run just 2 seasons ago. And then when you look at BYU, their strength is shooting the three-point shot. They take the most three-point attempts per game. They make the most three-pointers. That's a style that can get you a lot of trouble in March. So if they're not hitting their shots, they're very vulnerable. And you also look at that early start time, 12:40 is not their typical time slot. I think that could give some problems as well. I'll take Duquesne plus the 9. And as far as a sleeper team in the region, I look at UAB from the American Conference. Have won 5 straight games. Should have been 6. They blew that big lead against the Memphis Tigers. And you're going up against a team that sometimes we see this race, a team that made a deep run like San Diego State did last year, maybe a little bit overseeded because you look at the rest of the Mountain West, definitely lower seeded. So San Diego State with that 5th seed, they're going to be vulnerable to get knocked off by UAB.